Back at it here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. A lot to get to. The Kansas City Chiefs win again, now sitting at 4-1 on the year. What do we take away from that victory in Minnesota's? Patrick Mahomes' final numbers this year are going to be what? The numbers aren't quite as big as maybe a lot of us thought. Certainly, I thought he was breaking 6,000 yards. What will they end up being when it's all said and done? What is Travis Kelce at this point? He goes down with an injury again in week 5, but bounces back. Should they rest him? Should they sit him out? Doesn't look like they're gonna. Have the Chiefs solved their short yardage problem? Should Andy Reid play Rashee Rice and Justyn Rossmore at the wide receiver position? Justin Jefferson was held to just 3 catches. We have proof that this defense is rock solid now. As Chris Jones proved he's actually worth an Aaron Donald contract. Plus, we'll talk about the Chiefs and Broncos on Thursday night. Predictions coming your way right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by GannAsphalt&Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome if you're joining us via the podcast later in the week. Remember, you can always be a part of the conversation right here. We go live usually about 8 o'clock Tuesday night, 8 p. Central. If you want to be a part of the conversation, come on in. A lot of folks already lining up. We can see your comments, and we'll be happy to have you and entertain your thoughts and ideas, as well as all the other Chiefs fans that join us each and every week. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City. Gentlemen, how about it? Chiefs win again, this time over the Minnesota Vikings, a team that had only one win. What do you think? What's our feeling on what that win was all about, Jeff?
It was about handling business. It was about, dispatching a bad team. I think we were all in agreement that there was going to be a Chiefs victory. How it would look would be the big question. I thought they played well defensively. I thought that the offense, I feel like I'm watching the same game every week except for the Bears game, but certainly Travis Kelce stepping up, playing through with an injury that was certainly looked painful on the field, and the way he reacted to it was important. But I think this time of year is important because they're doing what they have to do against the teams that are beatable. This is the easy part of their schedule. The last few teams they played have 4 wins between them. No matter how you're getting the wins, you're getting them. And so when they get to the tougher part of the schedule, you have some credit logged. You've got some insurance in place when you're having to play the Eagles or the Bengals or the Bills, and those games won't be as easy to predict. You're in a good place. So look, I think that they're still not there offensively. Defense is still doing a great job, and they're getting wins. That's what it was. It was a handle business kind of game.
Eric, what's your view?
Yeah, it was. I think the Vikings are maybe a little bit better of a team than Jeff thinks, just because, you're talking about 5 games, 5 1-score loss, or 4 1-score losses, 1 1-score win. They, shutting down Justin Jefferson was a very impressive thing, even before he got hurt. I thought they stopped the run really well, a team that has been running the ball fairly solidly, the last few games. The wide receiver position is going to continue to be an issue. And so to that point, I do agree with Jeff. It felt like the same game. It felt like Patrick Mahomes just had to nut up and play hero ball at some point in the game. And he did. And the question is going to be, what happens in a game against a good team when Mahomes doesn't have his fastball that's really going to be the question, because I don't know if this Chiefs team, aside from their defense, can pick up Mahomes on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay. I like the business-like approach, right? That to me is this is a necessary game. It's a game you have to play. Is this just what it looks like when you're a championship team, right? Like, are we now this far into it that there isn't going to be fire and emotion? Like this is just, like the regular season's going to look boring because they're all about the postseason, Jeff? Is that what we commonly see out of teams that are of this nature?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if, I was around New England a lot during their peak years, and as much as people talk about what September was like, I mean, they had games when they were blowing people out and looking very impressive doing it. For me, when I watch the offense, and I know the bar is very high, we've seen this team play at a high level offensively for the entire time Mahomes has been the quarterback. And for me, what jumps out is this is the first time where it's a struggle, and you can see it in the face of Mahomes. You can see it in the face of Kelce. I don't think Kelce is fighting to get back in that game this past weekend if they trust the receivers to do their job. I think that for him to nut up, get back on the field, fight through adversity, and do all that stuff in a Week 5 game says to me, as Eric said, the receivers are not in a place where you can trust them to go out and do it. And they saw what happened in Detroit, against Detroit, when that was the case. When he wasn't on the field, they wound up losing that game. And so I think two things about, one, the receivers we know are an issue, but I also feel like Travis is getting to a place in his career in his mid-30s where you're starting to see what it looks like when he begins to have the things that come with being in your mid-30s. Now, you don't know how much he's declining, but you start getting banged up more. And now he's had a knee injury. He's had an ankle injury, both non-contact situations, both very scary situations for the Chiefs. And, he'll be out there this week. I have no doubt about it. But again, if he's not playing at 100% and he's not being able to give them what he normally gives them, right now he's on a pace for 750 yards this season. He's averaging 8 yards a catch. Like, I love Travis, but when you're just dumping the ball to him and expecting him to go break 8 tackles and make a big play for you, that's not their offense. And so they have to find some ways to get things going. But to your question, yeah, I mean, there are going to be growing pains because every year you're bringing in new players. But again, you're also measured against excellence, and that's what they've created for themselves.
Yeah, they are a victim of their own standards. McCole Hardman is supposedly on the trade block. I had a discussion with Sam McDowell, the columnist, Kansas City Star. I take it by the reaction both of you heard that. Is that a guy? He counts $2.2 million against the cap, and we had some people ask questions like, "Hey, who could they trade for?" Look, I'm not lobbying that McCole Hardman's the end-all, be-all, but he is a guy that made some big plays, 500 yards, a handful of touchdowns, ran the jet sweeps. Is he an upgrade in your mind, Eric, if you were to go get him over Justin Ross, over Justin Watson, over some of those guys? Is that something they should be looking at?
I mean, over who, though? Like
Justin Ross, Justin Watson.
But he doesn't do what Justin Ross can do, which is go up and get a ball when you need, when you're backed up like the Chiefs were, and he threw Pat handed the ball from 20 yards away to him. He doesn't do what MVS does as fast as he is. He's never been a guy that's threatened the defense that way. He's not dependable like Watson. He's Kadarius Toney, and would you rather have Kadarius Toney or I just don't see how he's an upgrade over Kadarius Toney at this point.
Interesting. You're usually a guy that's about separation. I know that's a stat you like to quote a lot on college guys, and now you're talking about winning jump balls with Justin Ross, which is usually not.
But I don't I Justin Ross hasn't caught on this year as much as people in training camp thought because of that. But that's if McCole Hardman were to come onto the Chiefs, he wouldn't be running what Justin Ross runs, right? Like he'd be doing the things that Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore do. And maybe he's an upgrade over Sky Moore at this point, but then you're essentially bailing on a second round pick from 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, listen, Sky Moore, I'll be honest with you. That's one of the things I said today, Jeff, was that like, are we looking at, Patrick Mahomes' numbers are way down from where they normally are. And we've decided that the wide receivers can't be upgraded. And, where is it? Are the wide receivers a problem? That's all anybody asks about at each media session every week. But then you bring up a guy that has had some NFL success and suddenly, oh man, he can't beat anybody out on this roster. Well, which is it?
Well, one, I was chuckling because it's hard to imagine anybody trading for McCole Hardman. Like, I don't know what kind of value you get from a guy who can't play
Was
for
it
the
the new
Jets right
thing
now.
based on the
What's
Randy
that?
Gregory and the J.C. Jackson trades? The new thing is you trade the player
Yeah,
and a seventh, and you get a sixth back.
back to him. Yeah, I can't see the Chiefs giving up anything to bring him back. And I agree with Eric. I don't see where he helps you develop the guys you already have. I mean, if they wanted to have McCole Hardman, they would have made a push to keep him here. So that, to me, they've already made a statement about how they feel about him, given the contract that he signed with the Jets. It feels as if he left here in a bad way because, again, the money he got from New York, that's almost like I'll play anywhere else but in Kansas City type of situation. And I just don't feel as if, one, he's not the answer. First of all, he's not the answer. Secondly, they have too many guys in the mix. I keep saying this every week, and we'll get to Rashee Rice and Justin Ross as part. I think they just have to get to a place where they say, here are the three guys we trust the most, and let's go with these guys. Let's stop trying to make sure everybody gets an opportunity, everybody's an equal participant. It's okay to, whatever the line is somebody used about treating people equally, but making sure that you're taking care of people that really matter the most to you. It's a meritocracy league. And right now, there's certain guys who just aren't meriting getting opportunities. I mean, MVS has vanished too. He's caught 3 passes in the last 3 games. Sky Moore has caught 6 passes in the last 3 games. And I know they keep saying this is not how it's going to be a situation where you're having Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill types stats coming out. Why can't it be? I don't understand that part. Why can't they alter what they're doing and say, we're just going to go with these guys, the guys who we trust the most? Because that feels like what's affecting Mahomes the most is that when he's out there, I don't think he trusts a lot of the guys who are running routes, and those guys aren't giving him reasons to trust him.
Yeah, I listen. All I hear is MVS ain't doing anything. All these guys aren't doing anything. And again, but they're, Hardman can't come in and be an addition. Again, I like somebody said, I don't want to see anything given up. The deal would either, I like the idea best of the Jets releasing him and then signing him. But these are the kind of moves that the Patriots made down the stretch, right, Eric? I mean, this is how they operated, is grabbing these guys after somebody's overpaid for them and it doesn't work. They're always bringing guys back into the mix, and they get more from them than anyone else. It's clear that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid make McCole Hardman, but they know how to make McCole Hardman. And they're not making Sky Moore. They're not making, to Jeff's point, MVS here of late. He did have a big play taken away that might have looked better. But I also like Hardman will at least go deep when the quarterback scrambles. And MVS had that play. I'm convinced Patrick Mahomes rocketed that ball into the stands because he's like, what are you doing, Valdez-Scantling? Like, he clears out, swings around, and Valdez-Scantling's kind of like, pisser. And Mahomes just slung it to the back of the end zone. It's like, dude, I can get it there. Yeah. DeMarcus Robinson, literally every nickel he has made since he left the Chiefs came from just going deep when Mahomes scrambled and Mahomes hitting him. Give it a try. It worked for him.
MVS's instincts are not particularly good. Deion Branch comes to mind for the Patriots. But the problem is like the Chiefs would have to Jeff's point, the Chiefs would have to significantly alter what their plan is at wide receiver to incorporate McCole Hardman. And, I think that they could significantly alter their plans at wide receiver, but it'd have to be for somebody better than McCole Hardman is kind of my point.
Okay. That's fair.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if they were to come in and actually,
why do they explain to me real quick on why they have to alter? Like, what is changed?
Well, because they have 7 wide receivers, 6 now with Richie James on IR. Like, they're not going to carry 7 again, so they're going to have to cut one player.
Why not? Like who? This is what I said today. I know nobody wants to cut a second-round pick in the second year. Show of hands. Who thinks MVS ever has 1,000 yards? Or not MVS, excuse me. Sky Moore ever has 1,000 yards in a season.
I think Sky Moore ends up being a complimentary player at best.
Boy, that's rich. I don't see it. Jeff, what?
But they didn't cut. I mean, McCole Hardman. What was his best season? Like a 600 yard?
No, about 693 yards.
693 yards. And so if he got to that, I would say it's a success. Like they're not gonna cut him. And when Charles Omenihu comes back, like Eric's saying, you're gonna have another roster decision. Somebody else has to be pushed out of the equation. But I also feel like they're not running the kind of offense that McCole Hardman would benefit from. They've certainly moved away from being more of a deep ball, big shot, what Miami's doing right now. And I think the people that they got are run after the catch guys. And so Kadarius, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Richie James, like Justin Ross is a 50-50 guy, and Justin Watson's, he's got deep speed, but he's a possession guy. I think what they want to have is an offense that's more about running after the catch as opposed to explosive plays. And I think that's just not where you're going to benefit from having McCole Hardman back in the system. Now, it's very early in the process. I don't think this group is going to be great, but I think they will get better. But the question is, what will it cost them to grow into what they expect this offense to be? At some point, will this group cost them games?
Yeah. I the only guy I see getting better is Rashee Rice. I don't see any of them getting better. MVS is what he is. I think Sky Moore is what he is. I do give him a chance. First 3 years, some guys break out. Devontae Adams broke out in year 3. So I don't want to cut him, for whoever saw something in him, give him a chance to flourish. But Justin Watson is what he is. I'm I only see upside really in one guy.
Yeah, and Soren and Eric's the resident receiver in the group. It's very hard to play that position and not get targeted. It's very hard to play a position and not get catches. What they're selling is this pie in the sky notion of, hey, it's free flowing, everybody's gonna get their opportunities, and 1 week it's gonna be. You don't get paid doing that. So it's still a business. And all these guys, I guarantee, when they go home and look at the stat sheet and saying, I caught 3 balls for 33 yards, I'm on pace for 400 yards. When it comes to free agency, they're going to be saying, what the heck? I'm not getting paid off. And so it's a tough sell. These are still receivers.
Sure.
It still matters getting the football.
Let me comment here. Pat says Sky Moore is not meant to be the choice. Veach traded down, pick up more picks, and thought Pickens would be there. Pickens was not on many draft boards. All right. There's a lot of red flags that come with Pickens, who has not necessarily exploded in Pittsburgh. But I don't know that the Chiefs. I've had people tell me he was off the board with the Chiefs. I can't confirm that, but he was definitely off the board with other teams. I know that. So I don't think that was the plan. I think they may have.
They also wouldn't have traded down 4 spots.
Yeah, I think
it wasn't that good of a trade. Like, it was a good trade down, but it wasn't like, they didn't pick up a ton of value to the point where they would have given up Pickens.
4,376 yards passing, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, with 524 rushing yards, which would be a career high. These are the numbers that Patrick Mahomes is on pace for. We're talking about the wideouts. What does it end up looking like, Eric, when it's all said and done? Is this what he's going to be all year, or do you see an uptick coming from Mahomes?
They're so good defensively that I don't know if it'll actually get better. Like, I don't know. Like, the schedule gets harder, so he'll have to put up some numbers. I think you'll see an uptick for sure. I also think you'll see – this is hard to say, but, I still think Travis Kelce will get to 90% of who he's always been, because I still think he has residual stuff from week 1. I still think, 10 catches the other day, even though, the yards per play were down, was still good. They haven't pulled out any running back stuff in the passing game the way that they did last season. They have a lot of outs here. So I do think it gets better. I think you get into that 4,600 yard range, maybe 38 touchdowns. But it's going to be less because the defense are they going to, you think about this, is the Chargers game going to come down to Pat needing 75 and a touchdown? Because he'll get it against that team. But if they're good enough defensively where they're up 10 at the end, and Pat doesn't have to go 75 yards and a touchdown, well, that's going to detract from his final stats. And the result from the perspective of the Chiefs is going to be the same, which is a win. So I think the defense is going to keep the Chiefs from actually having to stretch him statistically as much as he has in the past.
The schedule is going to get harder from a defensive standpoint. Are we sure about that? I mean, as we look at the Broncos, 32, Chargers are what, 30, somewhere in around that range. Broncos again, Dolphins defense isn't good. Eagles are better, not as good as they were last year, but they're a good defense. Raiders.
Well, their schedule so far, according to this great website called sumersports.com, strength of schedule before has an ELO rating that's about 1 point below average, and then after it's about a point above average. Not a point, but decent. Like it's about their schedule is about as much over average at the end as it's been below average to this point.
Jeff, I mean, I get it. The names are good. Bills, Bengals, Eagles. Eagles are undefeated. I take nothing away from them, but 2 against the Broncos, 2 against the Chargers, 2 against the Raiders. Those are not good defensive teams. Raiders are middle of the pack. That's the best one of that bunch. That's 6 of their games. What do you think Patrick Mahomes ends up hanging?
Yeah. Well, and the Vikings weren't good either. And what do you have, 281, 2 touchdowns in that one? I mean, I just feel like it's going to be a week in, week out struggle with this group. And if you don't have the explosive plays, it's hard to really push your numbers up. To have the 400-yard, 5-touchdown game, unless you're seeing the Bears, the Broncos possibly, but the Broncos always play them tough for some reason. It's going to be a challenge. I think he's going to be closer to what you're seeing, the pace. I think he'll be around 4,400, 4,500, probably 32, 33 touchdowns. I don't know if the picks are going to be as high because he usually takes pretty good care of the football. But, I mean, right now, does he have a 300-yard game this season? Did he get 300 against the Jaguars? Is that what I'm thinking?
Let's take a look.
And I think that was like the last play was like a 40-yard pass to Sky Moore, right? So, I mean, I just look at those numbers. I look at those defenses. There's a lot of opportunity to make hay, and they haven't. And so
you're pretty right on, Jeff. It's 226 against Detroit, 305 against the Jags, 272 against the Bears, 203 against the Jets, and 281 here against the Vikings.
Yeah, I'd almost argue that's the worst stretch of his career, 5-game stretch in terms of yardage, and certainly having 200-yard games or not having 300-yard games. And so I think Eric makes a good point that when you have a better defense, you don't have to take as many chances with the football. You're going to be in situations where you're running 4-minute offense at the end of the game. You're trying to have a long drive. They've had a couple games now where a long drive has helped close it out. And so you're running the football more. Pacheco is more of a weapon for you. And so it feels like the combination of the receivers being mediocre and the ball being taken out of his hands, either because of the running game, situations, or defense, will hurt his overall stats.
I think he picks it up. I think he's going to be in tighter games, which is going to force them to score some more points. The caliber of defense, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but, maybe the caliber of the other offense. I think there'll be some games where he has to go up and down the field. So those numbers will increase almost just off they always have. But I mean, it's not going to be 5,100, 5,300. I don't think it's going to be, 50 touchdowns. I would put probably the ceiling at 40, which he'll probably come up short from. I think it's going to be a little different, but if it results in a championship, nobody's going to mind that. By the way, if you have a problem with your parking lot, do you own a business? Do you manage a property? GannAsphalt&Concrete has been proudly serving Kansas City since 1994, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems are problems no more. They've been making them disappear since, like I said, 1994. That's 30 years, folks. Why risk problems in the parking lot? Could be accidents. You can eliminate a lot of stress, a lot of problems, a lot of wasted time with a new parking lot from GannAsphalt&Concrete. They're online at GannAsphalt.com. What is Travis Kelce at this point, Eric? What do we think he is? You said 90%. 90% of the best that he's been, or 90% of whatever? Because you've been pointing out he's been getting a little bit slower every year for 4 or 5 years now. What does that look like? 90% of Kelce.
I think the end of the season, he'll be 90% of the average of who he's been the last 3 or 4 years. So 2022, he was absurd. 2021, he was a little weaker. 2020, he was absurd. I think, yeah, by the end of the season, he'll be who he was in 2021, which is good, but not necessarily going to light the world on fire. I think good enough for this Chiefs team to do what they need to do. And frankly, like this entire discussion, I mean, it centers around the question of like, do we need Kelce to be? Do the Chiefs need Kelce to be who he's been every single game of every year anymore, or do they need him to be do they need him to find the fountain of youth 2 or 3 times a year? I think it's the latter, right? I think it's in a Chargers game where Herbert plays out of his mind. Travis Kelce can go out and score 3 touchdowns. In the Bengals game in the playoffs or something like that, can he come out and be that dependable player? They're so well-rounded as a football team now that he doesn't need to be the everything everywhere all at once for this team the way he had to be when their defense was as bad as it was in 21 at times, or when the run game was as putrid as it has been at certain other times. So I think 90% of who he's been kind of the last 3-4 years is going to be more than enough for this team to win, and I think he can do that, especially given this little mini bye here, the bye they have in the future. Like, I think he'll get there if there are no physical setbacks.
I said this today that like I wouldn't mind seeing him sit out this game on the short notice, but if he's already back practicing, it says that the ankle's probably good. But remember, like the Patrick Mahomes kneecap seemed to almost be the cure for the ankle in 2019. 2 weeks off, he came back. He was much better the rest of the year after that, and he had been nursing an ankle that he got twisted several weeks before. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's something you would have set in motion and not practice him at all. If you're like, look, get healthy, he wouldn't have been trying to push through and practice on it right now. But are you confident that he can still be a difference maker, Jeff?
He can be a difference maker, but is he going to be a dominant difference maker? Like when he's on the field, yeah, he's going to affect what defenses do. But it's, as I said earlier, when you start having these kind of injuries to your legs and the way he plays, it's not like Gronkowski where you're going out and you can post guys up or you can push guys around or you can just 50-50 ball your way through a season. I mean, this is a guy who relies very much on his agility and his quickness and his separation. And when you're trying to shake people and you're trying to come out of breaks and you're trying to do all this stuff at a high level, when you start having those kind of injuries, it takes a toll on you and it opens you up to other types of shots. I mean, he's getting hit a lot more. Like when I watched him play, he's taking a lot more punishment. That Jacksonville game, you saw the way he reacted to it. I think Andy Reid talked about them butchering him and beating him up at the line of scrimmage. And it's, you never want to discount anybody who's a Hall of Fame player, but guys get older. And I remember watching, someone mentioned Antonio Gates here, and I remember watching, receivers like Jerry Rice at the end of their careers. And it's like, yeah, they're getting whatever, 80, 90 catches, 1,100 yards, but it's not the same as it was when they were younger. And that's the thing. They need him to be averaging more than 8 yards a catch. I tell you right, that's not going to be getting it done. And so I don't know how they get to that place, but I agree with you to a certain extent that if you're going to be using up, I think you have a certain amount of chips in every season once you get to your mid-30s. And if you're using those chips up in week 5 and week 6 against teams that aren't that good, then I'm sorry. That what Eric's talking about, the supporting cast, those guys got to get it done right now so he can get healthy for the long haul. It can't be him using those chips up in week 5, week 6, and then you get to week 13, 14, 15, and he's more banged up. Like, this is where we're at with him.
Yeah. What about the short yardage? Are we convinced that that's all fixed? They did have some new creative plays. They're a little more effective. One of them was called just running the offense on 4th down, which netted them a pass interference and got a first down. Are you convinced that they're solving, maybe not solved, but at least solving, Eric, the short yardage issues?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, for one, let me look at the stats here. Actually, he hasn't been doing that well. Like, Trey Smith was injured last year, with an ankle and where he was having a hard time pushing off. And so but he also hasn't played that well this year per PFF. So I'm interested in that one. Like, the other part, and maybe you guys can like back me up on this. Like, I was at the game. A lot of people were like, are you nervous for this game? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not nervous for any Chiefs game that's played before January, ever. Like, I just, like, none of these games, no one thing matters that much to the Chiefs until we get into, we get into a later part of the year. And maybe, Soren, they've taken that approach to short yardage. Like, oh, it's 4th and 1. We're going to run a play action. We're going to YOLO to Valdes-Scantling, who, has a lot of qualities, but one of them isn't like contested catches. And they just like went for him. And it's like, if that ball's incomplete and they lose the game, so be it. But like, them playing to win is better than playing not to lose, which I think is what their short yardage has been for the last year plus. And so maybe it's just a difference in mentality, because I do like them just running their normal offense. I do like them just turning around and handing the ball to the running back and like not trying to get Blake Bell involved and all this kind of nonsense. Like, and I think part of that is just, and maybe this creeps up in the playoffs when the games do matter, but I like them kind of acting as though no one play, no one game matters, because that's actually true.
Jeff, I listen, I enjoy them running the regular offense. You clearly, I think Eric's point about Trey Smith is a good one. You're not very good. Like he said, just hand the ball off. Not on 3rd and 1. They suck at that, right? Like, so, and my bigger frustration has been that they treat 3rd and 1 like it's 4th down, and then they get a little more aggressive on 4th down. How about be aggressive on all of them? But, are they good enough, or is this going to be an Achilles heel for them? Did you see enough to feel like they can consistently convert short yardage?
I feel like it's going to be a work in progress. I felt like that Valdes-Scantling play was more of a, let's let people know we'll do this from time to time. So they'll back up a little bit. Because really, 4th down, short yardage, unless you're going to do what the Eagles do and line up and just have everybody within 2-yard line of scrimmage and push your way forward, you're going to have to get people to be a little bit off balance. And so that can allow you to run the football more effectively too. But yeah, I think they haven't been in those situations. I think being in the situations they were in against Minnesota was totally different than what they were in situations with Detroit, where they felt the pressure there. Against Minnesota, I think they felt as if we'll get more opportunities to score if we don't get this, which speaks to Eric's point about being loose and being flexible and being a little more imaginative. But they're going to have to find some kind of bread and butter there that allows them to line up and get those and convert those kind of situations, because right now they don't have it.
Is one of the answers on offense, and I know we talked about the wide receivers a little bit, but does Ross and Rice, or one of the two, need to be featured more, Jeff, to be, get them going? And let's see, let's live with whatever mistakes there are and try to expedite the growth curve.
I'm coming around to your Rashee Rice prediction. Justin Ross was a nice surprise, but I feel like some of what he did was because he really hadn't done anything. They probably weren't prepared for what he offered in that game, or the route he ran, where he had the nice leaping catch. But Rashee Rice looks the part. He has been, at least he's flashed. He had another drop in that game, but he is the money man. He's the guy right now you can say, all right, we've seen enough positives from him in each game he's played to think he can deliver for us. To go back to what we were saying about the other receivers, Sky Moore's vanished, MBS has vanished. I feel like when Kadarius Toney catches the football, that's like a roller coaster ride in and of itself. I never know how it's going to end up, because it just seems it's like a punt return half the time.
It's almost like a demolition derby. Like, he's going to take hits. He's not going to go down. You're going to fear about where the ball is, because he's tough as nails. I mean, God bless him on that. But man, it does not look traditional.
Wow. And you always wonder, why can't he get the ball 15 yards down the field on an over route or someplace in space where he can make one guy miss? It's always in traffic. It's always short stuff. But I like Rice's potential. The more I watch him play, the more I like him. Again, the only question I have is it feels as if he does most of his damage when he's the third or fourth option, that people forget about him. If he becomes a bigger option, that means you're drawing more coverage and more attention. And I don't know how he does against man coverage. I mean, it seems like he's doing most of his damage against zones.
Eric, do we need to see more of those two, or maybe more?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about, like, now PFF only goes back to 2006, but I think that it's illustrative. Rashee Rice this year is averaging 2.62 yards per route run. Anything over 2 is really good for a starting receiver. 3 is Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill type numbers. Right, the PFF, like, this is wrong, but PFF only has him charted with 1 drop. I think that there are some like borderline ones there. But Terrell Owens in 06 for the Cowboys, 2.06 yards per route run. He had, almost 1,200 yards. He had 17 drops. 2007 for Dallas, that Dallas team was 13-3, had the 1 seed in the NFC. He had 16 touchdowns, 1,400 yards receiving, 13 drops, 2.53 yards per route run. There are prototype receivers in this league that are good yak guys, good get open guys, good just overall productive players that drop a lot of passes. And I think the juice is worth the squeeze for them. The issue is you have to get Mahomes to be okay with that sometimes. I think Mahomes, the way he is with, like, he doesn't throw contested stuff very much until, the Justin Ross thing the other day. He extends plays. Mahomes will stop at nothing to avoid a 0 in a pass play, right? And I think Rashee Rice frustrates Mahomes and frustrates Reid because they don't like, I've set this play up amazingly. The guy gets open, he drops it. But offenses in the history of the NFL have succeeded even with wide receivers like that. And I think that it's part of the Chiefs' maturation to say, look, our receiving core is not perfect. It's in fact not even good. So for us to elevate that group, we have to be tolerant of a player like Rice who does almost everything right except for catch the ball as consistently as some other players.
Is this the time I ask the question, where's the slant? Like, does everything have to be a masterpiece? Like, is there, I asked Andy Reid and he made a joke out of it, but, like, after Patrick Mahomes said he got too greedy at the 2 interceptions, I said, well, hey coach, I know Pat said that. Can you get greedy as a play caller? I asked Matt Nagy it as well. And neither of them went anywhere near it. Like, they wouldn't be like, yeah, maybe sometimes we can't dial it up, or be thinking, like, at some point, don't you get too cute a little bit? Like, if you got a big, strong 210-pound wide receiver, here's a thought: take a step out, come inside, hit him in stride, 7 yards. Let's line up on 2nd and 3. It's oversimplifying this?
Soren, I'm not going to sit here and compare Rashee Rice to Jamar Chase, but the Cincinnati Bengals run some very simple stuff to get him open. I mean, how many times have you seen him run 5 yards up the field, cut inside, here's a catch, I'm running with the football?
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple. And I do agree with you. Sometimes they spend so much time drafting up, concocting all these elaborate plays that are going to create all these options. And sometimes you just have to play pitch and catch. Yeah. Sometimes it's talent wins. Sometimes he's the guy who's making it happen. Let's go to him. And look, they've done it in preseason, which is preseason. You're seeing different looks defensively, but they've done it with Travis Kelce forever. There's advantages in doing it and allowing a young, talented player to find a rhythm, which I think is important for Rashee Rice. That's the thing that I'm trying to say here, as far as when you're spreading the ball around so much, it's that for a player like Rashee Rice, who seems to be a guy who's used to having the ball a lot coming his way, like, if he's getting 8 targets and he drops one, who cares if he catches the other 7? Like, they've got to get to a mindset of those other 7 are going to be big for us, instead of saying, oh, well, Justin Watson's got to get his, and Kadarius has got to get his, and Sky's got to get his. It's like, it seems like they're overcomplicating it.
With free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews, plus every project coming with a written warranty, GannAsphalt&Concrete keeps your parking lot safe. It helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and expenses. Go to GannAsphalt.com. They can handle any and all parking lot issues you might have. Been doing it since 1994. Again, online at GannAsphalt.com. Justin Jefferson has only 3 catches, Eric. Is this a sign that this defense can handle any and all comers?
Yeah, I mean, this is awesome. I mean, I thought that Trent McDuffie would decline a little bit. He did have a rough couple plays against the Jets, but for the most part, he's been a standout. And he's data to support the fact that there are some blue chip players in the draft, and you sometimes have to go up and get one. I've always thought Brett Veach was a little bit over aggressive with that, but with the McDuffie pick, it was pretty good. Now, L'Jarius Sneed has also been playing fantastic football. He was locked
Not
up there.
according to PFF's grades. Good Lord. They got him at like 81.
Not my monkeys, not my zoo, Petro. The I thought Sneed.
By the way, I agree with you. I think he did really well. I'm not sure where those numbers are coming from.
It's weird. I think that Sneed offers a physicality that is really needed in this defense. I think he brings an attitude that is, and frankly, he's kind of got some of that, like, Legion of Boom, they can't call you every play type of physicality that demoralizes an offense at times. He will get called for penalties, and I think that's part of his grade at PFF and stuff. But I think that the defense has been playing phenomenal football.
Are you all in now, Jeff?
Yeah, I've been all in. I mean, again, they're a good defense. I don't think they're a great defense. They're an elite defense. Like, to me, San Francisco is an elite defense, but they're a good defense, or the best defense that they've been on the field since Mahomes has been here, and they really handled that challenge well. What I appreciate about what Spagnuolo does, and it's not just the corners. It's he takes people away. Like, I never understand when I watch Tyreek Hill running around getting 180 yards, or Justin Jefferson getting 150 yards, or whoever it is. And it's just like, you can't take him away. You can't make somebody else beat you. And I think Spagnuolo starts out, it's the Bill Belichick mindset. We're going to make you play left-handed. And so whatever your best weapon is, he's not going to be the one who kills us. That happened with Justin Jefferson. It's happened with Calvin Ridley. It's happened with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson. So every week in, week out, they're taking that approach, and I'm sure they're rolling coverage and giving safety help and doing all that stuff to make it easier on those corners. But if you're going to play this defense, you're going to have to find other ways to win outside of your workhorse. And I appreciate that about them. So, yeah, I think they're definitely playing at a really good level.
By the way, I quoted 81st. That was yesterday before the Monday Night Football game. Just to be clear, people are saying an 81 grade is good. No, he's got a 55 grade according to Pro Football Focus. 82nd of 109 corners that they grade. To be clear, Trent McDuffie is 3rd of 109. Joshua Williams is 31st. I find that
PFF, they ding, especially in the passing game. They ding the fall guy. If the defense is funneling people to L'Jarius Sneed, and L'Jarius Sneed gets beat every once in a while, like, they're going to ding him. And, they don't pick up the fact that the signal is in that they trust L'Jarius Sneed to get beat every once in a while. Right. And so that's Devin White was the same way in Tampa Bay. They funneled everything to Devin White. And so his coverage numbers were crap. But would you rather have the other team throwing to the middle of the field to your running back against Devin White, or throwing to the outside against single coverage with your corners? Like, that's the part that PFF misses when they do that, by the way.
I think the other thing that they miss is he's covering the best guy, right? Like, are we really complaining? And I know he missed the fourth quarter, but are we really complaining about 3 catches from Justin Jefferson? I mean, come on. Like, what are we doing here if that's the equation? His grades by the week, he did have a good grade here in week 5, but he's been dinged all. They gave him a horrible grade for week 3. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. Enough about that. Let's talk about Chris Jones and whether or not he's proven that he's worth the money. Jeff, are you willing to give Chris Jones that kind of cash? You've said all along he's going to get it on the open market.
From day one, yeah. And he's reinforced that belief. I mean, he's had a sack in every game. He's probably going to hit his incentives. That 15.5, whatever it is, incentive, or 15 sack incentive. I don't think he's going to get to Defensive Player of the Year. I think that's already, unless Micah Parsons just breaks his leg or something, they're going to hand him that trophy. But he's playing like a man who feels as if he's one of the best defensive players in the game, and each week he's showing up and making plays. And so that's, and I know that people don't like talking about holdouts, and Jonathan Taylor will get into our other podcast, but that's how the NFL has to do business. and it's unfortunate that it's come that way. But I was in LA last week talking to some coworkers, some ex-players like Michael Robinson and Steve Smith, and we were just joking about how the general public doesn't get how hard it is for players to get their money from teams, how much they have to fight for it, and how those fights really determine, the kind of guarantees you get. And so I totally think for Chris Jones to want that kind of money, he showed he deserved it last year, and he's showing it again this year.
I by the way, I do think Michael Dana's done a really nice job, but Chris Jones is the guy who makes it go. And Terry says, Chiefs going to pay Chris Jones now. How about it, Eric? Do you see the path with their cap constructed the way it is to where they would pay him next year?
I think it's still an underdog, but it's not impossible. We've seen this happen. I mean, we just saw it happen with Taylor. So yeah, it's certainly possible. I put it at 50-50.
Really?
I think it's high. I think it's high. I mean, football men, Jeff knows this, everybody knows this. Football men are defense first. Like us analytics dorks are like, we're different, right? We see build the offense first and then quarterback, wide receiver, all that stuff. I mean, football people are like build defense, build the line of scrimmage, all that kind of stuff. And Jones has been absolutely phenomenal for this team. And you think, I don't know if I would do this, but maybe Brett Beach and company are getting high off of the defense being actually pretty, not being a reliability anymore. And they see Chris Jones as one of the reasons.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. What are we thinking? Chiefs Broncos, Jeff. What kind of game do you expect?
Chiefs should win. I expect that. But, for whatever reason, the Broncos always play them tough. Even though they lose the game, last year it was 6-point victory and a 3-point victory.
Right.
I know that the Broncos are a mess right now and their defense is horrible. But if you look past those obvious flaws, you got a 1-point loss to the Raiders, 2-point loss to Washington, 3-point loss to the Bears, and they were driving for a game-time field goal against the Jets and ended up losing. They actually are 10th in the league in scoring, which blew my mind, which tells you how bad their defense is. But ultimately, Chiefs will win. I'll go 27-24, Chiefs win.
When you lose by 50, you don't usually score 20, but they did.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing about that one. Eric, I saw Curtis had the stat today on the radio show that 22 times on Thursday Night Football, taking out the season opening one where you play on a short week, there's been a double-digit favorite at home. They're 21-1 outright and 16-6 against the number. Does that continue here?
Yeah, there are a lot of now Sean Payton's not your traditional first-year head coach, of course, but there's a lot of signal to first-year head coach against a established coach and kind of what that game plan ends up having to look like and stuff. So. They're 10.5-point favorites, Jeff. So, if expectation is 3, then people should be going to, FanDuel.com/Petro and getting something down on the Broncos. If I could get a flat 10 in the market, I probably would, and I was betting, I'd consider taking it. I do think they roll here. I think a lot of the lessons learned from last year will carry over this year, meaning don't take this team lightly. I mean, we got, the Chiefs got the best that Russell Wilson was going to be last year at times. And he's actually played fairly well other than taking sacks and stuff like that. So I think that regresses on Thursday, however.
Yeah, I love that stat.
So 30-17, let's go.
30-17. I love the stat that Curtis had. I mean, home teams on Thursday night were dominant when they first brought this back. It was just like they even when they were dogs, they played well. When they were favorites, they wrecked them. I will say, I've heard some people try to say this is just like the Bears game. Russell Wilson's much more accomplished than Justin Fields. Vance Joseph, as bad as he's been, has had success in this league. Sean Payton's not a first-time head coach. His defensive coordinator's not, leaving, although he may fire him. But there's a lot more likelihood that the Broncos put this all together and have a day and hang around. That being said, I wouldn't bet on it. You either bet the Chiefs or you don't play it. I think the offense gets a little bit healthy here. Probably the last time I say it, but I'll take 33-13 Chiefs. I think this one's going to be decisive, and you're not going to be sweating it if you bet the Chiefs minus the points. That's going to do it. Don't forget, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. If you own a business, if you run a business, if you've got any kind of parking lot issues, why risk accidents and liability in your parking lot? Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents, cuts down on unnecessary delays to your business. You can do it right now by going to GannAsphalt.com or calling 816-484-3338. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold